gathering with the exchange of ideas, knowledge, ideas, and stories. So thank you to everyone for being with us here today. We would also like to start off this afternoon with some good words. So I will invite Elder Veteran Vincent Romero from the Laguna Pueblo to give us a few good words.
Orale. Oh, sorry. Wrong meeting. Tsitsi. Pecha. Pecha. Sayayu. Ashtia. Tsitsi. Dawa E. Dawa E. Sa Damu. Sa Damu. Samude. Ashtia. Ashtia. Samude. You are children of the Creator. The Creator has given us life through this water, and we are grateful for it. It comes from the rain, from the clouds, from the Creator's breath, and all that stuff. Everything that's involved in that. Gua e bonima. Gua e bonima. Look past our humanness. Look past our humanness. We make errors. We hurt each other. We don't think of others first. Many times. We should. So, Creator, look past that. Gua e bonima. Good pinache. Be with us. Bless us. Kaoch. Kaoch. In this place. Kaoch. Hoba. Amoma ayetigo. Amoma ayetigo. In our doings. In our ceremony. This is our ceremony. Our education gathering. Every time we're together, it's our ceremony. We're in ceremony with each other. And for spiritual people, there's enough said there. So keep that in mind when we're talking to each other. Keep that in mind when we're mad at each other. Keep that in mind when people cut us off. They go from a human being to a piece of crap. You know, just that fast, all of a sudden they're worthless because they cut you off. And then all of a sudden we forget about that one time we cut somebody off last month or last week, or even 5 minutes ago. We were demoted to that same insult. So the reason I'm saying all this is because through our lives, we have so much to give to each other. We really do. And when somebody makes a mistake, or they're, in our mind, if they're erroneous, or they need to learn how to drive, all of that stuff, what do we do when that person gets better? Do we stop hating them? Do we seek to mentor them and help them with their new life? If they become sober, if they become nonviolent, if they go back to their families? How do we help them become what we want them to be? And then how do we forgive ourselves for not helping them, or ignoring them, or cursing them? That poison we put in our own hearts. Somebody wrongs us or hits us or something. We're gathered here right now for a whole different reason. To focus on the gratitude of the gifts that we have, and then to work together on how to present that to our children, to each other, to ourselves, and work better on ourselves in working with each other. So it's a win-win situation. So I asked Aishtia, Za Baba, ancient grandfather, come on, you know, Doa, Hopa, this is your people. Ka, Hopa, we are the Creator's people. We're the Creator's sons, we're the Creator's daughters. We belong to the Creator. And we're thankful for the gifts.
Thank you, Vince, for those beautiful words and for helping us to start the conference in a good way. All right. So the host for today's conference is the Education Committee that functions within the Chicago American Indian Community Collaborative. And we refer to it as CAPE lovingly, but it's made up of 17 different organizations, which you will find a list of all those organizations near the back of your program booklets, which you should have received during your registration check. And so the mission of the Education Committee is to provide, advocate, and support an intertribal urban system of education through networks of Native American programs and other providers to increase academic and career success for multi-generations that recognize formal education and tribal cultural traditions. We're made up of educators, parents, students who represent 10 educational organizations serving Native folks in the Chicago area. So I am going to list some of those. So representatives from each of those organizations just want to give a wave. We'd like to recognize you. So we have the American Indian Center of Chicago. We have Chicago Public Schools American Indian Education Program. The Darcy McNichol Center for Native American and Indigenous Studies at the Newberry Library. A Field Museum. The Native American House at the University of Illinois. The Native American Support Program at the University of Illinois, Chicago. Totally, that's you. We have Northwestern University. Mitchell Museum of the American Indian. St. Kateri Center. And Visionary Ventures. So we are so happy to be celebrating our 6th annual conference, and thank you so much for folks for joining us together in person. We have CIMC waving over there in the back as Mark is a CAPE delegate. Yeah, so thank you for joining us today. I know it's been a long winter and today we have some lovely weather, so I appreciate you all choosing to be here with us today. Our conference theme this year is Waterways of Life, Teaching, Practices, and Knowledge in Action. And we chose this theme for our conference because water is connected to many teachings in our lives. And we have a conference tradition of having a large group activity. And this year, you'll notice a replica of a water on the wall here and some half sheets of colored paper with markers. And the sheets of paper have prompts, reflection prompts for you all to engage in that ask you about your relationship with water, around gratitude, around memories. And this tradition really signals that each and every one of us has knowledge and perspectives to share beyond the great lineup of speakers and sessions that we have today. Each and every one of you has something to offer and share together with us in the space, and we want to recognize and honor that throughout this activity. It'll be up throughout the rest of the conference, so you're welcome to engage with it at any time. And feel free to check out the reflection prompts that were shared yesterday. And then another piece is if you have any questions throughout today's event, you can find a conference volunteer. They'll be wearing a lovely blue shirt and a lovely red lanyard. So come find any one of us with questions that you have. We also invite you to visit the information booths in the back of the room here. And we especially want to thank the hosts of the facility, which is the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center, for sharing their space with us today and allowing us to host here this weekend. And included in your conference registrations are museum passes, so we hope you're able to find some time to visit the exhibits throughout the building. And then finally, I want to thank the fiscal sponsors for this wonderful event, and give a round of applause to the American Indian Center Chicago Public Schools, Field Museum, UIC's Native Support Program, Northwestern University, Mitchell Museum of the American Indian, St. Kateri Center, and Visionary Ventures. Thank you so much. I'll now introduce you to Toll Foster, who is the director of the Native American Support Program at UIC, to introduce our keynote speaker.
That's awesome. And Vincent, thank you so much for that introduction, because I feel like Marty doesn't have to embody so much of what we're trying to get across. You know, we are so blessed to have so many people in Chicago from all over Indian country made their home here and have blessed us with their expertise and their knowledge and help us. If you got this, then I'm going to read basically Marty's bio from that. Are we recorded? We're on? Okay, then I won't say too many other things about Marty, since he is my cousin. I do have the dirt. So, all right. So, Marty Matlock is a citizen of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. He married up to my cousin, who's a citizen of the Creek Nation of Oklahoma. He's a senior advisor for food systems resiliency at the USDA. So he's always on DC now, hanging out with Biden. And what's the ag department's chair? What's that guy's name? Bill Sack, right? So anyway, I don't know whoever that guy is. And he was previously executive director of the University of Arkansas Resiliency Center and professor of ecological engineering. I think he's the only person in my family anybody ever gave tenure to. So in the biological and agricultural engineering departments, Marty received his PhD in biosynthesis engineering, his master's in botany, and his bachelor's of science in agronomy, all from Oklahoma State University. He's a registered professional engineer, board certified environmental engineer, certified ecosystem designer. His research focuses on measuring and managing complex ecosystem processes at the local to global scales. Dr. Matlock is a recipient of the 2018 Cass Warlock Agricultural Committee for Agriculture, Communications Award. He served on the U.S. EPA Science Advisory Committee for Ag, U.S. Secretary of Ag's Committee for the 21st Century, and as Sustainability Science Advisor with conservation organizations and agricultural producer groups. One of the things I'm most impressed by is that he's a founding member of the Cherokee Nation's Environmental Protection Commission for the past 16 years, and has consistently worked with his tribe to work on environmental standards to hold Arkansas and Oklahoma accountable. So I hope you guys will appreciate it. I just want to say the last thing is Marty has always been focused on service. He's here pro bono. He didn't ask for anything here. We're just really grateful to have him here and to hear what he has to say.
Yeah. Steph, thank you, cousin Toll. We're all cousins, which means nobody. That's just the nature of it. Are we ready to go? So another lesson I've learned when you're married into this plan is you always ask, when am I supposed to finish? What time? Now I want to keep the next schedule on schedule and 12:15, perfect. So I'll try to take, that'll be fantastic. So am I ready to go, Aaron? It's an honor to be here. OCO from the Cherokee Nation, hello. What was the word? What is the word for water? DB. DB, and this is in the Pueblo, which Pueblo? Pueblo Laguna, so DB. And is that pretty common across the, I assume, is that forgive me, is it Hopi Navajo language tradition? Greece language, okay, so Tsitsi. So this is Tsitsi in Laguna language and Nibi in Ojibwe, thank you. Ama in Cherokee, Ama. So it is truly
the river that flows through us. I choke up on that every time, can't help it. So, because it's such a foundational principle of our identity, of our existence, and it's so foreign to everybody out there. So what I want to do is celebrate, first of all, the thing that we bring to the world, which is this novel understanding of our relationship with it. And it doesn't matter how many generations we have been collaborating with our cousins from Europe through our intermarriage, and we still have a core of culture that still persists in our places. And I want to celebrate that, but I also want to challenge us a little bit. So the notion that because you're urban, you're not indigenous and you're not connected to the land, I want to dispel. This is the most important place to be connected to the land. And Chicago is a really good place to teach others how to do that. Some of the axioms we start with, everything is connected. These are just part of our cultural understanding of the world. We understand that connection. Science is just catching up with it. The science of ecology and science of systems design, systems engineering, and supply chains. Boy, did we learn that we're all connected over the last 2 years as we start to see some of those connections break and the consequences of those broken connections. Everything is changing. This rate of change is something that perhaps indigenous people understand better than any other culture, because our ancestors went through changes that were unprecedented in the human experience. And the types of changes our ancestors went through over the last 300 years are the types of changes the rest of our global society is facing now. We persisted, our cultures persisted, our identities persisted, our people persisted because we adapted. And that adaptation, that approach to adaptation is going to be critical to our future because we're all in this together. All of us are in this together. And boy, if there's any group of people I know who know how to fight amongst each other more than any other group of people, it's our cousins. We can find something to fight over, and we can tear each other down so fast. It's partially because, like Paul said, we know each other. We know each other's grandparents. We've been together for so long. But it's also a challenge we have as a community because we share common goals with humanity. These common goals are unambiguous. We need to end hunger. We need to end poverty. We need to provide water to all people. We need to provide equality to all people, safe lives for people. This is the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. These 17 goals are absolutely key to our prosperity as a species moving forward. But their intention. Sometimes you have to make a decision to reduce the amount of fresh water you have in order to feed your people for a while. Those are things we have to decide. How do we decide those things? Who gets to decide? And how do we decide in such a way that it doesn't make our ancestors disappointed and doesn't make our children disadvantaged? Those are hard things to do. We understand that urbanization is not a new experience for our communities. We've been urbanizing, well, since the 1950s, certainly. Indian termination programs and policies. Our great woman, Wilma Mankiller, the Cherokee Nation, was moved to San Francisco when she was a young girl. She knew nothing really of her Cherokee heritage until she became a college student and then returned to Oklahoma to reclaim her place with the ancestors. We're at what, 71% urban now as a people. How crazy is that? We're no longer a rural people. Mexico has described this very well in his book, Urban Indian Experience in America. We're strong and prosperous in spite of these challenges, but we still have the difficulty of identity. That's why the American Indian Center is such an important place. And the rest of you folks who are here to help connect with culture in the land. But we are food insecure, especially our urban cousins. We're the most food insecure people in the United States. The consequences of food insecurity are profound in our health, in our well-being. Right now, we anticipate that 25% of all American Indian Alaskan Natives are consistently food insecure, and urban folks are twice as food insecure as whites. Food insecurity doesn't mean that you're hungry, but it means you don't have access to the food you want and need. And if you don't have access to the food you want and need, that means you're eating things you shouldn't eat. And we know the consequences of that. Now, let me suggest to you that what we do is who we are. Doesn't matter what we say, what we do is who we are. We nourish our communities. That's one of our traditions. That's one of the traditions our ancestors gave us. It's one of the traditions we want to promote to be good ancestors. Now, according to the American Indian Center, and I'm sorry, I got my graphics a little off place there, but Chicago is the third largest Native American population in the country. Now, I know you said sixth largest. I defer to your statistics, because this may be a little outdated. 75% of all Native people living off reservation in urban settings. The AIC represents the emerging Native population shift. And it's an incredible resource that you have in Chicago, the American Indian Center, and I'm a co-host of this event. And I want to say that the opportunity to partner with organizations like AIC to move forward is profoundly necessary. Because we know the injuries and injustices and insults that we've all experienced. We know them. And the prayer this morning was so powerful because it said, in spite of those, we choose our path. Our path is not, if we go down the path others tell us to take, that's on us, folks. We should choose our own paths. We heal ourselves and our communities and our culture by healing the planet which we live. We heal Earth. Now, there's a way to heal Earth from this urban center. And it doesn't mean that you have to protest a water treatment plant or a coal-fired power plant. Well, those are good things to do too. But it is our superpower. Healing Earth is the thing that we have a voice that rises above the din because of the current, it's not always been the case, but the current respect that our cultures and the paths we walk and our ancestors have walked have brought us to. That means that we, the members of Native American communities, have a stronger voice about those things that are about the earth. Because we are people of the land. We're free from the poisonous attitudes of land, water, and commodities to be exploited, which is the dominant European model upon which all capitalism is based. And I'm not anti-capitalist, though I'm becoming so. The more I see, and the more I work, the older I get. We see connections of most of the larger community ties. We see connections that most of the larger community tries to see, that ecologists speak of so eloquently, but don't really understand. That's just part of how we understand our existence. Of course, it's connected. Partially because in most of our communities, and we're 575 distinct tribes, and goodness knows how many other cultures, diverse, but still with it, because we are people of the land very recently, very few generations ago, when we depended upon the cycles of the land for existence, we understand it in an intimate way that our, frankly, dominant European culture does not always trying to. Those interconnections are just part of the way we understand the world. Our urban systems are the most damaged systems. That's why healing Earth here is a good thing. That's why I should start here. It begins here. Let me give you my perspective on how we, as a community, can heal ourselves and heal Earth. First, it begins with ourselves. Now, according to Amanda Fretz, who's a Mi'kmaq tribe member and epidemiologist at the University of Washington, nearly 50 years ago, heart disease was an unknown condition for Indigenous peoples. Heart disease was unknown to our people. Now, this is a little old. I think this is 2018, but still, it's contemporary work. So in the 1960s and 70s, we weren't dying of heart disease. You know, other things, lots of tobacco-related cancer, and diabetes seems to have always been with us, but heart disease wasn't the thing killing us. We make up less than 2% of the population that suffer from the highest rates of food insecurity, poverty, diet-related disease, socioeconomic challenges. Our culture is the thing we have that can get us back on track, get our personal health back on track, and get our community health on track, so we can set the example. Now, I have a bias. I work for the United States Department of Agriculture. I spent my entire career understanding how we live on the land, live with the land. So I have to tell you that urban and peri-urban agriculture, in my perspective, is how we start healing here. So the rest of my presentation is how we do this, how we engage in this process of healing the earth based upon what we do on the earth. Now, there's a difference between urban and peri-urban. We'll get to that in a minute. Urban agriculture provides a whole bunch of benefits. I mean, these benefits are profound. We expand annual food production globally, 100 to 180 million tons, growing on small plots in urban communities around the world. Energy savings ranging from 14 to 15 billion kilowatt hours. Nitrogen sequestration between 100,000 and 170,000 tons. Those are greenhouse gas emissions and water pollution. So we are saving the planet by reducing water pollution, reducing greenhouse gas emissions with energy, and providing food security. And we're avoiding stormwater runoff, which is a critical pathway of pollution, between 45 and 57 billion cubic meters annually, globally. So these things we do are worth already are worth $80 to $160 billion annually. And we're doing those as communities in small plots, in alleyways, in community parks together. How many of you guys have worked in your urban garden? Yay, because that's the way, that is a path forward. It's not our only path forward, but that's the beginning of our path forward. Project Thrive is a program that actually began with the Choctaw and Chickasaw Nation in Oklahoma, tribal health and resilience in vulnerable environments, where what these folks started doing, our cousins in Oklahoma started doing, is they recognized that in South Central, Southeastern Oklahoma, there's no grocery stores. You go to a Harps or a Piggly Wiggly, it's a 2-hour drive in many places. But we have lots and lots and lots of gas stations associated with casinos. Lots of them. So what we did is we just put in fresh fruit and vegetables in our casinos and in our gas stations. So we started putting those in, and it's been an incredible success. It's not profitable. That's not what I'm concerned about using capitalism as a driver for change. Capitalism is a vehicle to make money. It's really good at that. You want to do something besides make money, find another path. Sometimes you can make money while doing good. Most of the time, maybe you don't lose money. But capitalism doesn't solve this problem. Community engagement solves this problem. So let's talk about urban versus peri-urban. This is just some naming of things. Naming of things is important. Urban agricultural systems are typically defined as those things that are community operating. We do to mitigate food insecurity in our local neighborhoods, and it creates social capital. We work together. These are usually communally owned by a church or a social group or a nonprofit, or even the city, and we work together to actually improve the community well-being through this. Peri-urban agriculture, whereas this was an area I want our tribes to be engaged in aggressively in our tribal communities, which is the for-profit version of that, the one on the right, where we actually start putting our kids to work in good, dignified, high-tech jobs, growing things besides marijuana. I say marijuana is a gateway drug to horticulture. Everybody's learning to grow marijuana. Now we can start growing other things. And it's a way, it's profitable. It's a way for on the edges of town for small landholders to make money. Making money is an important thing because of that capitalism thing. If you can't make money, it's hard to raise your family. It's hard to send them off to whatever they want to do next, to explore their destinies, to give them the freedom to become. And so money is a part of that. You don't have to be wealthy, but you should be prosperous. And that means free from risk of poverty. And that's what we try to achieve. And we can achieve that with peri-urban agriculture as a commercial enterprise. Urban and peri-urban opportunities vary from everything from community gardens we just described, which most cities have, 100% of our cities have community gardens. You can go all the way down to greenbelt agriculture, which is what I'm talking about. Commercial agriculture on the perimeter that feeds the city. That greenbelt agriculture and vineyards and berry patches, those three areas, I think, are areas that we could be incredibly prosperous together with. Our tribal communities provide economic support, loans, no interest, low cost loans. We can get risk management support, we can get educational support. We can work together to create an indigenous food supply that doesn't insult our people, but uplifts our people. And by the way, so doing, we uplift our other communities as well, who are also struggling. Which of our sort of ethnic communities in Chicago do this best? You see examples of this in Chicago, folks growing their own food? What's that? Who? Which groups, ethnic groups? We have a difference in places. Different groups. We see in Northwest Arkansas, we have an immigrant population of Martys, and they are dominating our farmers' gardens because those guys can produce more on a square meter than anyone I've ever seen. So we can do that too. We have that in our cultural traditions. We're maybe 2 generations from it. We ought to regain it. Again, I'm not talking about producing food as a social statement. It's also an economic prosperity pathway, but we should do both. So I'm arguing that we need to do these things. The reason is because they advance our health, our food security. They make food more affordable. And energy costs, they have a advantage in reducing energy costs. They reduce climate change a little bit. They help develop new technologies. Really, it's about health and food security. We heal ourselves and we heal the planet. Now, these are a lot of words. I'm not going to read them all. But the slide deck is available. You can ask Tal. He can get you the slide deck if you want it. You can use them however you see fit. They're all public. But Chicago Regional Food System Fund is doing grant making. They have a grant next week, in fact, for growing local foods, developing organizations. You could organize today, sitting on a table and figure out how to organize, look up their grant program online to build a resource and capacity for individual organizations. You could form a Native American food system organization funded by the Chicago Region Food System Fund and get that application in next week. That's in your reach today. That's an action you can take. You can strengthen partnerships between organizations and institutions of various sizes and geographies. They will fund those things. And then we're talking about $50,000. That's enough money to motivate, get some things done, get a little legal paperwork done from a 501(c), work with the city, start identifying plots of land, that sort of thing. University of Illinois Chicago has the 50th annual powwow coming up, right, Tom? That's September 17th, right, Tom? Yes, you just started planning, as I understand. You have a planning committee. You're still open for more planning folks, or is it that? So if you want to work with this is your first outdoor powwow. 3 years? 2 years? That's the regional powwow. Incredibly powerful events for all of us. We know as a converging, a place of coming together, it's an incredibly powerful opportunity. But also, I mean, we just have, we need to support these events because we need to support each other. We need to say to the rest of the world, we're here and we matter. And not only do we matter, we're going to fix things. We've got to make a mess of it. We're going to make things better. We can do that together, but we have to show up and make things better. That means we have to be aware. These things need to be on our calendars, and we need to share these with our cousins. Folks need to know. Now, nationally, we have Intertribal Ag Council. Intertribal Ag Council, of course, we have the Food Sovereignty Symposium coming up in May. Registration is open for that now, and a number of other things. So this is up in Minnesota, but still the opportunities for engagement are incredibly powerful around food in our tribal communities. There's going to be a meeting in Vegas that I'm supposed to speak at sometime in late May. I don't have the schedule yet on food sovereignty and tribal issues. Land-based agricultural resources are vital to the economic and social welfare of many Native American and Alaskan tribes. Harmonies of man, soil, water, and vegetation and wildlife that collectively make up the American Indian agricultural community, influence our emotional and spiritual well-being, and can do so in town. It doesn't have to be out there. It can happen here and be even more powerful because of the number of people who see it and the number of people who experience it. This is the way we lead by showing. And of course, we've seen urban advocates for urban agriculture, food land opportunity here in Chicago, localizing the Chicago Food Shed. They have grower training, good practices training, grown in Chicago Council to promote your food. Water access, they have to flood. Water systems have to empty fire hydrants usually every 2 weeks in order just to flood the old water out of lines and make sure you have chlorinated water in your tap. And all that water usually just gets drained in the street. You'll see it, private fire. Well, what these folks are doing is working to make sure you schedule that so that water is captured and utilized in these urban ag applications. So it saves water and it puts water to that use instead of running it down the street. That's organization. That's thinking systemically. That's working with the community to make things better, and they have capacity grants. So it's another resource. Again, all these slides are available to you. So you don't have, but now I'm going to talk to you about the folks I'm working with now, USDA. Because Secretary Vilsack is an old guy. He's older than me by like a generation. So he's a grandfather. And he has the wisdom of a grandfather. And he says, this is my last ride. This is my last pony ride. This is the last time I get to lead this organization, USDA. I want it to matter. And I know that we've worked diligently for decades to try to improve things. But he has told us, he has challenged all of us to say, push the boundaries, push the edges, and we need to aggressively correct past mistakes, past sins. And among those are the willful exclusion of people from the pathways to prosperity in the land. That's been one of the challenges. So we have an aggressive Native American Indigenous agriculture support program. Heather Dawn Thompson leads the Office of Tribal Relations. And so we are working closely together with the Office of Tribal Relations in NRCS and other programs. You go to farmers.gov, and then you can see a whole list of opportunities we have. So you can look at food access, education, business and startup costs, development of policies and zoning. They have two types of grants available. These will typically roll out in the late spring, early summer cycle. Last year was May. I would expect to see this May or June, these proposal applications. Go to the webpage, farmers.gov, and sign up so you'll get emails about this. You can get project planning grants of up to $200,000, $50,000 to $200,000, or implementation projects if they're ready to move. If you're ready to go and grow, you can get up to $50,000 to $300,000. These are undersubscribed programs for Indigenous folks. We can get these funding, these programs funded better than faster than most. So the easiest thing to remember is just www.farmers.gov. Go there. Now you can always email me, marty.matlock@usda.gov. That's another for at marty.matlock@gmail.com. Yes. Yes, there's that problem. Let's talk about a couple of other programs we have listed. The Farmers Market Promotion Program. There's no reason we can't have an Indigenous farmers market, an Indigenous people's farmers market as sort of a cultural way to celebrate. And you already have farmers markets around the greater Chicago area. You can have your own. Why would you have your own? Because it becomes a cultural celebration beyond just the food. And it's an opportunity to sell our crafts, to share our culture, to share our journeys. We can get the Farmers Market Promotion Program. We have $50,000 to $250,000 grants over 36 months in community development training and technical assistance, $100,000 to $500,000 grants. I'm talking to you folks from educational communities. These programs are available and will fund your activities that support events just like this. Now, we also have the local food promotion program. This year, we'll spend $43.5 million in this program. It's a lot more money than we usually spend. Planning grants, $25,000 to $100,000 for 2 years. Implementation grants, $100,000 to $500,000. Farm to Institution is a new one that provides supplemental dollars to strengthen and expand opportunities. So if you already have a program, a food program, and you just need to expand it and link it better, that program is brand new. It started last year. We're growing this year. They support a wide range of opportunities to do what we're describing, which is give us sovereignty over our food again. So not required to go to 7-Eleven to get our groceries. Then the regional food system partnerships is sort of how you would grow this out. Partnerships that connect public and private resources to plan and develop the whole system. Maybe this is another place this body engages, that this organization engages and moves to food systems. Because I remind you, food systems are water systems. Food systems are climate systems. Food systems are cultural systems. Food systems are public health systems. That's where everything connects. Finally, I'll leave you with, again, this is all, the intention was that you guys get access to this thing. And so if you can, put this on the webpage, just as a PowerPoint. Just forget anything so people can get the hyperlinks. So use these slides, everything's cited. So we have a number of resources. The EPA Handbook for Urban Agriculture is valuable. It tells you how to figure out if there's a problem with putting a plot of, if you've got a brownfield, for example, and the resources you can work with in a brownfield to avoid putting a farm in a place that has lead contaminated soil, a chronic problem in North Chicago. You don't want to do that, but most plants are pretty good at keeping the lead out. Sunflowers actually pull the lead in, use them to remediate the land. Urban Agriculture Toolkit from USDA is a pathway to how to do everything we just described. And then you can just Google urban agriculture to find a plethora of opportunities. And then the grants, farmers.gov. So I'm going to leave you with, because everybody talks about Robin Kimmier, author of Braiding Sweetgrass, because she went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, got her master's and PhD there in botany. But she's an Indigenous scholar. When times are easy and there's plenty to go around, individual species can go it alone. And I would replace species with communities. But when conditions are harsh and life is tenuous, it takes a team sworn to reciprocity to keep life going forward. Ultimately, this is the principle behind how ecosystems work, because ecosystems are defined by the hard times. I would dare say, and ecosystems that we see today are alive today, are functioning today because they survived the hard times. I would say that we are people of hard times. We have survived, our ancestors survived the hard times and got us here. We need to strive to be good ancestors. Thank you. All right, Aaron, we have questions from the floor. Questions, comments, anything? Oh yeah, let's stop the recording so that you can ask your questions with impunity. Yes. Tall email, so yes. And then you can also just kick Tall in the shins and get his card and email him, because I emailed him last night, so he's got them too. I think Aaron has them too. So I made them, it's not a real, I didn't use a lot of graphics. Yes. So how do you want to do the rest of the questions? Any other questions from the audience? Come on, guys. Folks, do you think agriculture is a reasonable pathway for you know your community better than I do? And I come to you as an outsider with full humility that I don't know your community, but I think I know what your community is capable of. That's just, yes, but those are brownfields. Brownfields are what EPA calls old industrial sites. Now, cities are historically very prone to giving old industrial sites to nonprofits because it gets them off their books and it's no longer their problem. They've suffered a lot in the last 40 years from doing that. Cities and corporations and others, they don't do that so much anymore. It wasn't long ago that communities in North and East Chicago were putting subsidized housing, public housing on those brownfields. Children were playing in lead contaminated soils. That's bad behavior. That bad behavior we're diligent about now. That's why you look at it, you don't work with EPA. Your community is diligent about that bad behavior now too, because it costs them a lot of money and you can't hide it. And they just don't do that anymore. We have all, as our opening prayer reminded us, we have all been guilty of bad behavior, individually, collectively. We just have to be diligent that we don't allow that to happen again. It is not a threat. I don't want to perceive you to perceive that as a reason not to. I just want you to be aware that we acknowledge that there are places that are good for this, places not. And let me tell you, the best thing you can do is find a paved alleyway that gets good east-west sunlight. So it's maybe north-south facing, so it gets good east-west sunlight with no trees around it on pavement, and build raised beds. Because you control the soil in raised beds. It's the soil you put there. And that's your best solution. And it also is easier to manage the squirrels. And let me tell you, the bane of any rural farmer, worst thing that can happen to any rural farmer from a wildlife perspective is deer. So you have urban deer, but they're not that big of a problem. Yes. Design and planning versus implementing. I'm going to repeat this for the folks out there. Yes, so you appreciate the distinction between, why do you appreciate the distinction between design, planning, and implementing? So as Indigenous people, because consensus is our sort of normal way of deciding, we have to have the space to do that, because the linear get it done, do it now sort of Western model does not fit that. And guess what? That model doesn't work either. And the rest of the world, including those Western traditions, are trying to change. And there are entire consultancies teaching companies how to do that, and governments how to do that, because they're horrible at it. And what they're doing, and what they don't know, dirty little secret they don't know, is it takes a whole lot of time. And if you're not willing to spend the time, don't do it. Horticulture. Absolutely. So I showed you the Urban Ag Institute. They have training courses, free training courses, public training courses, certificates, programs, and then projects that you can participate in. They want to show you how to do this in the slide deck. And I'm happy to, I mean, if you Google Urban Ag Chicago, I got this information. I don't have any grand insights. USDA stuff I have, their offices next door to mine in DC. And they emailed me stuff last night to make sure I was up to date on the new programs. So you're the first to see some of those program announcements. But the Chicago urban system is, you have a good infrastructure here for starting these programs, good infrastructure. And if you don't like that infrastructure, you have access to support that will allow you to start your own. Okay, yeah. There it is. So the Advocates for Urban Agriculture and Food Land Opportunity Chicago Food Shed programs. Incredible. You see, this is one of their courses, one of their workshops that they had. You see, the diversity of people represented is profoundly exciting because this is representing those who are typically disadvantaged in our communities. Neighborhoods where we have food deserts, neighborhoods where we have, and what we share with our cousins from Africa and even some of our cousins from Asia is a high propensity for diabetes and other diet-related disease. It's killing us. Heart disease, diabetes, hypertension is killing us. What we eat is killing us. Yes. Oh, opposing argument. I love this, please. Oh, love me. So I want to catch the folks up that who are listening online to your comments, because I can't remember all of it. So I think everything. So your history was that you were working with indigenous or with Western food systems and growing Western foods, and you're actually organically selling them and living and eating a Western diet. That's our sort of dominant diet in the United States, and you have all the cascading disease problems, and you move back to a meat-centric diet, a protein-centric diet, and it has made you. You have healed yourself with your diet. Yes, so I'm celebrating that because that's exactly what I'm advocating. Yes, aren't we all? Yes. And what, yes, I really don't want to interrupt you, but for the folks who are out there, I'm trying to sort of translate. So you're advocating for an indigenous traditional diet from your community's history that aligns with your metabolic capacity and genetics. Your phenotype is designed for a certain thing. We didn't evolve with milk like the Scandinavian culture did. Adults drinking milk. Some do, or grains like our Mediterranean cousins did. And the evidence is clear that health is attached to phenotypes, to their genetics. Now, well, don't we know that colonial food is flour, fat, and salt? Right. And absolutely. And so what you're articulating is precisely what I am. I'm not dictating what you grow. I'm not even or what you eat. I'm saying that we have to have a conversation about our own sovereignty. We have to do exactly, we have to follow the path that you're following, which is identify the pathway that works best for us. Our Polynesian cousins do not have the same high protein pathway necessarily, but they do have, it is a completely different list. And I've worked with our cousins from Hawaii, and they are food insecure, and 70% of indigenous people in Hawaii, Native Hawaiians, get their food from 7-Eleven, and diabetes and heart disease and death at 50s. So, oh, absolutely. So, absolutely. And I absolutely celebrate what you said. Let's get some other questions. Do we have any questions from the floor? Oh, nothing in the chat. Yes. We don't discriminate against age. We just make sure you know how to spend it. So the question is, do you have the organization around you that is qualified, a 501c3 typically, or a tribe? We give money to tribes too. The program administration is presumed to be competent, and young people are some of our best innovators. So absolutely, and in fact, we're looking for programs and projects to celebrate. And the problem we have is we don't have young people in agriculture. Most people growing things are our age. Don't mean to presume your age, but my age. And so we're becoming elders. And then, so who's going to grow the next generation of food? Well, corporatist agriculture is, and you're going to be getting your food from 7-Eleven and McDonald's. And that is not a prosperous future in any phase. And it doesn't make a healthy planet. It doesn't make healthy people. So Tal, I think I'm out of time. What's my time? Yes, in the back. We don't know how to do it, Sheriff. We want you to show us how to do it. This is our problem. We're all learning this together. Some communities do it very well. And so urban ag programs, again, what we have to distinguish, it's kind of it's not new at all. We were doing this in the 30s and 40s, but it's new in the way we're organizing it. That urban agriculture really is about for the community versus peri-urban agriculture, which is the enterprise, the prosperity business model. And we need both. What we really need is we need to move folks who are learning how to do this stuff in their neighborhoods as young kids and saying, I love this. This is how I want to make my life. Being going out, Rockport or 20 miles out, buying 5 acres, which you can afford, believe it or not, with a USDA loan and setting up their own gardens, their own meat processing facilities. We don't have mid-scale meat processing facilities anywhere, so we can't get mid-sized mammals like goats and sheep processed. And so we're trying to do that too. We have lots of problems to solve, but we need people out there doing it. So what I can tell you is that we could work with our larger, something that you could do is organize to actually bring people in from Baltimore, from New York, some of the boroughs in New York, from Atlanta, who have done this very well. The Atlanta metro system has been giving land to producers. So if you get off the metro in Atlanta, and there's a farm there, and it's a community farm, and it has a farmer's market booth right next to it, as a way to try to build access. So there are all sorts of creative partnerships you could build here. But you got to build them, because they're not going to happen without you. And that's the one thing we do bring to this system: the ability to organize, the ability to engage, because that's the only way we survive. I'm going to leave it at that and turn some time back over to you, Tal. Oh, the American Indian Theater is starting an agriculture. Boy, did I foreshadow that? That's good. No, it's self-evident. I'm so thrilled they are, and I'm not at all surprised. So, thank you, guys. Hey there. Hey, Josie. Okay. Ooh, that is so kind of you. Oh, that's beautiful.
And all resources will be going up on the website for the conference.
Receive this with respect. Thank you so much.
Wago, Cherokee, Wago, which is sort of a generic way to go. Oh, that was good. Hey, that tasted really good. Cheers.
Okay, we do have lunch set up in the lunchroom over here. You guys are more than welcome to come in for the next hour. We got a little bit over an hour for our break. You guys are more than welcome to join and talk to some of the info booths that are out here. And then starting at 1:30, I believe we have our upcoming sessions, the current sessions taking place in the classrooms over here. Again, if you guys have any questions throughout the day, anybody with a teacher on or more than welcome to ask questions. Okay, thank you.